The schools may be gone, but the legends live forever. Welcome to the Final Jumpshot podcast. Here's your host, Marcus Carlton.
Welcome back to another episode of the Final Jumpshot podcast. Today's episode, we're going to feature one of the schools that served as a part of my inspiration for creating this podcast. Now, all of my life, I've heard the story about when my beloved Biggers Reno Buffaloes faced off with the Parkdale Dragons in the 1980 Class B state tournament in Monticello. Now, we've discussed the 1980 Biggers Reno team in a previous episode that featured the Morrow brothers, and we talked about how that was one of the best teams in Buffalo history. Now, the state tournament matchup with Parkdale was very memorable, just not in a positive way for my Buffaloes. I've heard the story several times, and every time I listen to this story, the name Ronald Claiborne is always the centerpiece of the story. Ronald Claiborne was one half of the Dragons' starting guards, along with Randolph Morris. Now, this tandem of Claiborne and Morris has been dubbed by some to be one of, if not the best duo of guards in Arkansas high school basketball history. This is the story of Ronald Claiborne and the back-to-back Class B state champion Parkdale Dragons. Well, joining me now on the Final Jump Shot podcast, this is a very special guest that I had a lot of help tracking this gentleman down from one of the most legendary teams in Arkansas high school sports history, Ronald Claiborne, a member of the back-to-back state champion Parkdale Dragons of 1979 and 1980, and also the only Class B boys team to win the overall state champion, the best of the best in the state of Arkansas. Mr. Claiborne, I appreciate you joining us here on the Final Jump Shot.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marcus, for having me.
So talk to me a little bit about the community of Parkdale. It's very almost as far south as you can get in Arkansas before you hit Louisiana, correct?
That is correct. In fact, it's about 5 miles from Louisiana border and about 30 miles from the Mississippi Bridge. So it was right there nestled in the corner, southeast corner.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, growing up in Parkdale, I'm not sure how unique it really was. Obviously there are a lot of small towns throughout the state of Arkansas. Parkdale seemed to be maybe somewhat unique. We were surrounded by a lot of small towns where everyone pretty much knew each other. And the only game in town, or the only sport in town, certainly in Parkdale, was basketball. And obviously we played it from sun up to sundown. Everyone had basketball goal of some sort, whether it was a old tire that was nailed to a tree or a bicycle rim. I was fortunate at a very young age where we actually had a full court basketball diamond in our backyard, regulation. It was dirt, but we had it. And so I played basketball from a very, very early age, and watching my older brother and his friends and even their older friends play basketball. So it was something that I quickly latched on to and developed a sincere, passion for. The town, we were somewhat isolated. We didn't have media. Obviously no libraries, no newspapers, no TV stations or radio stations or fast food or anything of that nature. So it kind of gave way to kind of a family type of environment where, just like in most small towns, as a kid, if you get into trouble and adults see you, they'll discipline you on the spot and then call your parents and you'll be disciplined again when you got home. So it was, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Honestly, we were not exposed to, outside type of environments and influence. Right. And so in many ways, we were really sheltered. And I think that helped us a lot to not have those types of distractions so we could really focus on what we love doing, which was playing basketball.
Well, that what you're describing from that small community sounds very familiar to the way I grew up, especially the part about if you were out in public and you started showing out, you were just as likely to get it from one of the residents of the neighborhood, and then, like you said, they were going to call mama and you were going to get it again when you got home. So I can relate to that 100%. So
I have fond memories.
I understand. Like I said, I can 100% relate to that. So let's get into the basketball a little bit. The success of the Dragons in the 79 and 80 seasons, just absolutely amazing. But I want to back up and kind of set the table a little bit for those two seasons. I believe your sophomore year, the 77-78 season. What are your memories of that? And did you guys as a team, did you kind of get a glimpse of, hey, we may have something special on the horizon here?
We did. That team was led by my older brother, Mickey Brown, who was an all-star in state as well. And so I looked up to him my entire life, certainly at that point. We were able to, I think, go a lot farther than any of our teams ever had before, right? We had a lot of great athletes to come through Parkdale, but the direction and guidance wasn't there. So, the talent was there, but we just didn't have anyone to kind of cultivate that talent and point us in the right direction. But that season generated quite a bit of excitement, not just with the players, but with some of the surrounding towns as well, because, they cheered us on and they were, hoping that we could go, all the way. We lost that year to Palmerville in the semifinals of the state by 2 points. And, that was one of those situations. My brother, he reminds me that we would have won that game had he not fouled out of the game. So, yes, we knew we had something special. The fire had started to burn, and we were really excited about, coming back into the community, rolling up our sleeves and preparing for the next season.
And so let's just go ahead and transition right into that next season, the 78-79 season. I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that was the year that you guys went on to win the overall in addition to the state tournament, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So I know we're gonna talk a little bit about my coach here in a little bit, but. I would be remiss if I didn't mention him at this point. Coach Danny Ebs was and still is a revered coach, a man that when he showed up in Parkdale, everything changed. Everything changed. He was, and I'm sure still is, a master motivator. And he taught us how to win, the intricacies associated with playing basketball. Prior to his arrival, we went out and played strictly on talent, and we won a lot of games that way. But, we didn't play with a lot of strategy. And he basically took us to games to scout. He showed us the nuances of playing man-to-man defense and just he transformed everything that we did and what we thought and how we thought about playing basketball. And so as a result of that, we were able to, transition into really an unstoppable force. If you know, our team, we were not very big. The tallest guy we had was 6'1.5", and my cousin Elijah Caldwell. And so, but he could jump over the gym. But we had heart, and we did not believe that we could be beaten by anyone as long as we played our game. And, one of Coach Ebs' sayings has always been, any team can be beaten on any given night. And we had to be prepared every single game, not just physically, but mentally as well. And so as we started to win, and we absolutely believed and trusted in everything that he said, and because the things that he taught us, and the way he taught us, and the way he carried himself with respect and confidence, we kind of took on that persona, and we emulated that out on the court. And just pressing teams the entire game. There was only one team that was in I guess, close to us in terms of being in shape. And that was a team called Wilmer. They were outside, just I think 8 miles outside of Monticello. And they were kind of like Parkdale from growing up playing Pee Wee basketball up through high school. But they could never really just get over the hump because we were always standing in the breach. But once the confidence, we won every tournament, and we wanted to play some of the larger schools, but, they wouldn't book us, right? And for whatever reason. But, yeah, we had confidence. I personally, for me, I didn't believe, and maybe this may sound somewhat arrogant, but I didn't believe anyone could guard me, regardless of the size. That's the type of confidence that I had, and my teammates shared that confidence as well. I mean, if you think about it, we had a 5'10" guy playing, the low post and guarding guys like, eventually, Keith Lee and Michael Cage and those types of guys. So we had heart, and we believed that we could absolutely slay the Giants, which we did on our road to the overall. Yeah, it was a masterful. It was just unbelievable.
So as you guys are going along and you basically just run through Class B with from the little bit of research I've been able to find on this team, you guys didn't have much of a challenge along the way through the state, through the regular season, district tournament, state tournament, and then it was almost like you didn't see an equal level of competition until you got to the overalls and you started playing the bigger schools. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement. However, I mentioned Wilmer. We consistently beat them. We did lose one game my senior year to them. And then there was a school, McNeil and Palmerville. Eventually, they were consolidated and became one school. They had really, really good players, and they were in the state tournaments, and, they were going to be a challenge for us, but we were able to overcome that. But I think in short, we stood head and shoulders over those teams because of some of the dynamics I just mentioned.
Sure. So you mentioned one of the losses your senior year came, I believe, to Wilmer. What I was able to piece together, I was able to piece together 2, maybe 3 losses over the course of 2 seasons. Does that sound correct? Because like you said, the whole thing about being isolated, that was perfect timing when you said that, because when I went to try to research on Parkdale, I was very limited in the amount of records and everything that I could find. And a lot of what I have learned in the process of building up to this interview has come from secondhand stories from guys who played against you, and watched, Parkdale from a distance.
Yeah, and I've gone back a few times to try to, dig out stuff in archives, and it's not a lot, but, it's interesting, Marcus, because I still have people reaching out to me. Social media, can be a powerful thing. And I recall, my mom traveling around the country, and she was visiting someone in Memphis and at their home, and they were talking about Parkdale. And this person was describing this basketball player, and she had no idea that she was talking to my mother, right? So it's really interesting in terms of being isolated, but how word of mouth kind of spread around the state, and sometimes it kind of bled over into other areas. But yeah, when we won the state championship in 79, we, as I mentioned, we had that confidence. And so being isolated, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? We never had the opportunity to play, the 5As, Little Rock Central, the Pine Bluffs. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the opportunity to play them. And we were not familiar with them at all, right? And so on the playground, we had tall kids coming in from out of town, playing on the ball diamond that we would beat all the time. So playing, guys who were bigger was not anything that we were unfamiliar with, although it was not organized as you would find, playing in a regular game. So I recall, Marcus, one of the things that really comes to mind when we were we were on a bus traveling up to Conway for the overall, and we were traveled through Pine Bluff, and we were on that stretch between Pine Bluff and Little Rock, and all of a sudden, I think it was like 4 or 5 buses from Pine Bluff. They had their pep buses, and they were, making fun of us and yelling out the window and showing signs and, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And we took that very personal. And, I think the papers, maybe the Gazette and the Democrat, most of them had predicted we were going to lose by at least 20. And I'm not sure if you dug this up, but, and I recall the headline said the Dragons de-striped the Zebras by 20 points. and so that was a memorable moment for me. And then, of course, playing some of the other schools, Osceola, I think Marmaduke, if I'm not mistaken, Marmaduke was the number one
That's correct.
Team.
Yes.
It's not horrible. And so we didn't know really anything about them other than the rankings. Throughout the year, you would look at the rankings. That's pretty much about most of the information that we would glean from various sources. But we still didn't believe that, we could be beaten. Again, no one was in better shape. And if you can think about, pressing someone, the entire court and playing man to man on teams that were not accustomed to that tenacity and that heart. I mean, we blocked out. We had to because we were small. So we were putting our as Coach Ebs would say, put butts in the thighs. We were doing those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And again, we had done our research. And so we had a game strategy, whether someone, only dribbled left or, just little nuances that we studied and we practiced and we were prepared for that. So it was a great ride. And frankly, we didn't really understand the magnitude of what we had done. We didn't. And keeping in mind, we were isolated. We just knew that, hey, we won the overall tournament. We won, the state championship, and we beat these teams who were supposed to be unbeatable. But our mentality, was at that time that we could beat anyone. And no one could beat us as long as we played our game. So it was a memorable run. I recall, traveling to the state capitol. Bill Clinton was our governor at the time. And, we went there and had an opportunity at the state capitol to take some photos and be recognized. So I'll always remember those times, those moments.
And then follow that up the next season, 1980, very, very similar. You guys roll through, win the Class B state championship, go to the overalls, and then you run into a team from West Memphis that had at least 2 future NBA players on the team. And that's renowned as one of the best teams in Arkansas history. And, I talked to my cousin who had actually played against you the previous year in that year of 80. You guys actually eliminated him on the path to the state title. He went down to watch the overall, and he was telling me that, getting into the fourth quarter, it was a game between West Memphis and tiny Parkdale.
I will tell you what happened with that. So he's absolutely right. I think at halftime we were ahead by 13 points or so. And we were basically playing our game. We were running, playing man-to-man defense, blocking out, that sort of thing, because, you had Michael Cage, 6'8", Keith Lee was 6'11", and then the other guys, 6'3", et cetera. So they were a big team. They were a really, really good team. But the way that we played, they couldn't keep up with us, right? We're a small team. And so what happened at halftime was our Coach Ebs had left. And I'll circle back to that in a moment. But Coach Ebs left, and we had hired a coach who I don't believe had ever coached before. And during halftime, he was a little excited, to say the least. And he had a brother who was assistant coach, I believe, at Henderson or Hendricks. I think it was Henderson. He essentially turned over the halftime pep talk to him. And the strategy was, going back out in second half, was to play the Arkansas 5 game. That was to stall the ball. And that's what we tried to do for an entire half, to stall the ball, with me playing that middle. And playing guys that big and stalling the ball, it was something that wore us down, and we were not able to overcome that. We didn't change strategies that entire half, and I think we ended up, I want to say we lost by 13, something like that. But I truly believe that, had we kept our strategy, and I certainly believe had Coach Ebs had been there, we would have won that game. I don't know if we would have beat Little Rock Central, because they had a great team as well. But I do feel like we could have. We didn't win it, Keith and Michael would say something different, obviously. But we definitely had a chance to win, at least go to the finals.
So that's an amazing story, because I knew, like I said, I had limited details on the game itself, but to take you guys out of your comfort zone basically is what it sounds like you're telling me that happened in the second half, because you guys were a running team and relied on your speed and your quickness. I counted up, I as best I could, I counted up about 3 total losses in that 2-year span. Does that sound correct?
I think that's right. We had my junior year, which is the year we won the overall. Mm-hmm. We lost a tournament game that was the second year. So that year that was the year that we lost. Who did we lose to that year? Obviously, we lost to West Memphis. Mm-hmm. But, no, I'm sorry, we won the overall. So 79, that was the year that I had it in my head earlier. I think I may have made a note here. I know we lost to those 2 years. We lost to West Memphis, Wilmer, and Gould. I'm sorry, Dumas.
Dumas, okay.
Yeah. So no, I'm sorry, it was Gould. So Gould was Gould and West Memphis. They were 1980, and then Wilmer was 79.
Okay.
So I think we did a total of 3.
Okay. Well, and the reason I ask about the losses is the recurring theme that I've had with everyone I've interviewed for this podcast so far. When I go to ask them about some of the memories that stick out to them, the first statement I'm getting from everyone is, yeah, the wins were great, but the losses seem to stick with me as much, if not more so, than the wins.
I would say more so.
Yeah.
I can, as we talk about it, my body is getting chills, because I can remember those games like it was yesterday. And, coming from Parkdale, keep in mind that we played Pee Wee basketball, the same group that grew up in Pee Wee, junior high, and high school. And we lost, I think, a total of 2, maybe 3 basketball games in Pee Wee, right? My 5th and 6th grade year. So we were not accustomed to losing basketball games. And it was very, very hurtful then. It is hurtful now as I talk about it, because, we lost. And so, I say, hey, the teams that we lost to, they beat us. My hat goes off to them. But yeah, it was devastating to us. And it wasn't one of those situations where sometimes you see games and after the game, everyone, is kumbaya and hugging and all this other stuff. We didn't grow up that way. We were competitors. And on the court, we gave it everything that we had. We didn't have any friends on the court. And typically we would win. But in those few instances, when we lost, we took it like young men, and we went back to work to prepare for the next go around, which we did with Wilmer. We ended up coming back and basically, giving it to them, pretty well, to kind of let them know that we were still, in our minds, certainly the champs and king.
Kind of goes back to what Coach Ebs had said about anybody being able to beat somebody on a given night. I mean, that I seen where that fits right there. But how sweet was the revenge when you got to go back and make the statement and say, hey, you may have gotten us once, but make no mistake, we're still on top of the mountain here.
Oh, absolutely. And having known those guys from 5th grade up, that same group of guys, and they were never really able to beat us. But they always thought they were better. And they prepared and say, we're going to get you. And I don't think I've ever seen a team that excited about having won, and their fans. And so we knew that every time we played them, there was a possibility that they could beat us, right? Because, they played a similar style. They were in shape, but our confidence level was a little bit higher, and our commitment, I think we had more commitment, and we were more focused to say, hey, we're going to go back out here and we're going to put it on you. I remember playing it was a conference game in Monticello at UAM. And I remember like it was yesterday, Marcus, that day, it was on a Saturday, and I wasn't feeling well. And I almost missed the bus to come to the game. Made it just in time. So we get there, and we're playing Wilmer. And the gym is full. I mean, the governor was there. Eddie Sutton was there. I mean, everybody was there because Ricky Norton was they were playing. It was in a state tournament. And so, and I think I had maybe 13 points or something like that in the first half, and I just wasn't feeling well. And at halftime, my coach was like, what's going on? And I was, and this is not Ebs, this is another coach. And so I was like, I just don't feel well. I'm having cramps. So I gave him some popcorn. And I remember as we were walking to the dressing room, everyone's like, hey, Claiborne, this, that, and I just said, hey, I got it. Got myself together, and I came out. They had a freshman guarding me, and he did very well that first half, but I came out, I think he had like 7 or 9 shots in a row. And that was pretty much it. The light came back on, and we were able to beat them rather convincingly. And I think at that particular point, they realized that, Parkdale, the Dragons, are the best. And we proved that in front of, a pretty big crowd of very influential people. And so we were very happy about that. And again, not really certain about what we had done. We know we were in a dogfight, and we were going to do everything possible to come out on top. And fortunately, we came out on top during that particular tournament.
So you mentioned earlier about you and your teammates playing together, from an early age on. Talk to me about some of those teammates that were with you, through the entire run.
Yeah, so I'll name a few. Randolph Morris, who played our left wing. He and I were like brothers. We grew up together. We thought alike. I mean, I could finish his sentences. And that's why I think our tandem was so great. I knew what he was going to do before he did it, and vice versa. So we played extremely well together. Elijah Caldwell, who was my cousin as well. 6'1.5", our center, could literally jump over the top of the backboard. Great guy, excellent defensive player, awesome player. Larry Dunn was 5'10", and I've never played with an individual who played defense like him to be his size. He was fundamentally sound. He wasn't great offensively, but he could shut you down, anyone. In fact, he guarded Michael K. For quite some time. And then Lord Henry Collins played the right wing, my junior year. He was 1 year ahead of me, and he graduated in 1979. Very seldom ever missed. Very seldom missed. The same with Randolph. And then Johnny O. McHenry started, my other cousin, small town, started on the right wing during my senior year, who was another excellent shooter. We could absolutely depend on him if we needed some points. And then Dennis Morris, who was Randolph's brother, he played the high post for us. Excellent shooter, excellent free throw shooter, played really good defense. So we played together for years and years. And I think, having that camaraderie, and understanding the moves of our teammates before we even did it, or, sometimes we did things without even thinking. And keep in mind, we just didn't play together during the season, we played together all summer. And even during the wintertime when it's cold, we're out playing together. So it was just, I guess, a marriage, so to speak, made in heaven. And we were just really fortunate to love the game of basketball the way that we did. I mean, we played rain, shine, sleet, or snow. Even at nighttime, when we didn't have lights out on the ball diamond, we played. So it was a wonderful time. And I said when we started at the beginning of this podcast, I wouldn't trade any of that for all of the riches in the world.
You talked a little earlier, briefly, about Coach Ebs and how everything changed when he got to Parkdale. I want to dig a little deeper with Coach Ebs. For those who are listening to this podcast that might not be familiar with him, and you were trying to describe him to someone who's never met him or was not familiar with his line of work and coaching in the state of Arkansas. I mean, he's a member of the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame, won over 600 games in his career, multiple state titles, multiple overalls. I mean, as a player, how would you describe Coach Ebs?
Coach Ebs means so much meant so much to me and our players in our city. He is certainly on Mount Rushmore. We didn't know when Coach Ebs came, keep in mind, we were isolated from the rest of the state. So we didn't know anything about Coach Ebs when he came. The only thing we knew was that the 6'4", 230-pound, solid, muscular guy walked into the gym one day and gave his spiel. And he said to us, look down to your left, and there was a brick wall at the end of the gym. And he said, by the end of preseason training, if I ask you to run through that wall, you're going to do it for me. And we thought he was crazy because we had never experienced anything like that. Master motivator. I mean, he was a master motivator, and he still is, and he exudes confidence. And he won every place, not just with boys basketball, but he won with girls as well. He didn't just coach boys, and he won on both sides of that ball. I love Coach Ebs, because without him, I would not have certainly had the success that I've had. And I told him about 3 months or so ago that the things that he taught me and the things I learned by listening to him and watching the way that he moves and some of the learnings that he drilled into our heads, I use those things now in my life today, to live. Right. I manage large teams. I'm in corporate America now. I spent a lot of time in the military at a very high rank. So I had a lot of people reporting to me, and I used a lot of those motivational speeches and things like that from him. But he led by example. He didn't just talk it. He walked the walk. I mean, we would have free throw contests during practice, and he would win just about every last one of them. And he would get out and guard you. He was phenomenal. He is phenomenal. And that's why if I had to sum him up in one word, it would be Coach Ebs is a winner, born winner. And he could tell you stories for days that would just get your blood pumping to make you just want to go out and run through that brick wall at any point in time. And so he's beloved by, I know, all of my teammates and folks in the Parkdale community. And I'm sure, the girls and boys that he's coached, throughout his life. He's one more time. And again, I love Coach Ebs to death because, again, without him, we would have never won any of those state championships, certainly wouldn't have won the overall. And I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had in my life.
So following high school, you go on to play a couple seasons with the Lamar Cardinals. Was it a bit of a culture shock going from Parkdale to Beaumont, Texas?
Marcus, that's an understatement. Keep in mind, growing up, my family, I grew up in a house with my mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. My father lived in Chicago. We never owned a car, ever. So we didn't go anyplace. We couldn't afford anything, right? So anything outside of our community was foreign to me, right? We had Hamburg on one side, Eudora on the other side. Those were the biggest cities and towns that we had ever seen until we had opportunities to go to Little Rock and Conway, play basketball. And so my first flight was to travel to Beaumont, for my trip with Coach Foster to visit the campus. And so it was like 23,000 students that went to that school. We had 500 people in my town. And so it was a culture shock. And I made straight A's in high school, right? But you go to a Division I school, and I felt like I didn't know anything. It was a struggle, honestly, academically, and certainly basketball. But keep in mind, I never had to fight for a position ever in my life until I got to Lamar University. And the guy who started in front of me was a senior. He was 5'10", guy from Houston, very good, got drafted, didn't play very long. I was working on something, okay, well, I'm the heir apparent. I'm going to step into that space, but it just didn't work out that way. Lots of nuances that I wasn't aware how to, maneuver within that space. The coaches were different. Their approach to basketball was different. Coach Foster, great coach, great person, but, you didn't spend time with Coach Foster. Didn't spend a lot of time with assistants. And for me, in that environment, I just struggled to figure things out. And eventually I came to the conclusion that, I had a great basketball career. I felt like I had a lot to offer, but I was not going to succeed at the level where I felt I could. And so I made the decision to leave. It was extremely hurtful. And I had discontented, I think maybe putting it lightly. And I remember that summer going to visit my father in Chicago, and I got a phone call from a coach in Canada who wanted me to actually come play ball in Canada. And I was at that point, I was just, I can't do it anymore. And I don't, everything happens for a reason. But it was a great experience. But I'll tell kids, now they have all of this exposure with social media, even, getting into shape. I remember, part of our preseason training was to run on the track. Marcus, I've never been on the track before in my life. I could not run on a track, but line drills, sprints, and that sort of thing, no one could beat me. But it was a culture shock, and, it just didn't work out for me. It just didn't. But the rest of my life actually worked out. It worked out very well. I'm pleased with where I am today.
So I want to talk now about Parkdale, the school. From the notes I found, they were consolidated into the Hamburg district following the 1993 school year. Earlier on, you spoke about how the community was tight knit and almost a family-like atmosphere. What are your memories of finding out that your beloved Parkdale Dragons were about to no longer exist and they were going to be absorbed into a larger school district?
I was absolutely devastated. We all were, because that was the only thing that town actually had was the school. It employed people. There was no other entertainment there. And so you have basketball games that the people in the community would come out to see and support. And so beyond devastation, and it killed the town, as it did a lot of other small towns, within the state. And there was really nothing that we could do. It was a really helpless feeling to know that now when I go back home to visit, the school is gone. And I don't get back that often because, again, the school is virtually, the town is, there's nothing there, no activities. And I see that the gym where I played and where we all played is now just grown up with all types of vegetation. The windows are broken. And sometimes it brings tears to my eyes because of all of the memories that we had from an early age and all the victories and the developments and all the takeaways and the structure and all those things occurred at that school. It was heartbreaking then, and it's heartbreaking now. And I hate that the kids in that community did not and will not have the same type of experience that I had growing up.
I mentioned earlier I'm a product of a small school as well, very similar in size to Parkdale. You mentioned the community of Parkdale having 500 people. The community where I grew up was around the same size. We had 400 to 500 people. And, some of the other people that I have talked to on the podcast here, they have mentioned that the school was the heart or even the spine of the community, and everything that went on in the community centered around the school, and that basketball was the entertainment for everyone. And if you needed to see someone through the week, you could just say, oh, well, they'll be at the ball game on Tuesday night or on Friday night, and we'll see them then. And I try to explain this to friends and colleagues of mine who attended larger schools. And I mean much larger, like, 4 or 5A schools. And I just try to explain to them how unique the small school, growing up in a small community and being in a small school where you literally know everyone that you go to school with. I try to explain it to them, and it's almost like I'm speaking a foreign language because they just can't grasp the concept.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really, I listen to, friends and people that I've met down through the years in various places, and they talk about their school experience. Sometimes make fun about, hey, you went to this small school. How many kids were in your graduation class? I said, 13. 13, you got to be kidding me, right? But yeah, it's inconceivable, I think, for them to be able to kind of understand and absorb what that looks like and what that feels like. But there's no other feeling like it, in my view, in the world. And if I, again, if someone said, hey, we can take you back, to 1978, 79, 80, and you can have this experience all over again, or you can go to this 5A, let's go to Little Rock and attend, Little Rock Central. Which would you choose? I would actually choose to remain in Parkdale because Parkdale, that experience molded me into the man that I am today. The ups and downs. It taught me how to deal with adversities. It taught me how to go without. And it taught me how to deal with people, although there were only a few people there, but it wasn't a monolithic type of environment, right? People were still different. And it humbled me quite a bit to come from that community with the success, certainly from a basketball standpoint, that we experienced. We still, although we had confidence, we never had the big head to think that we were actually truly better people than anyone else. And that's part of that community. Obviously, church was very important to us. In that community, if we were not at the school, something was going on at the church, right? And so I'm a humble type person, and I'm very thankful that I had the experience. And I wouldn't have had it any other way, Marcus. It was just a great experience. And, again, it feels great, to hear people from time to time, reaching out to kind of hear stories like this. I've had people, this year, a couple of folks reached out to want to talk about, Parkdale basketball and, what that experience was like, because it's kind of like, slaying the giant. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And being successful. And again, we didn't really know what we were doing other than playing basketball, doing something that we love with confidence. And we knew we won a lot, but we just didn't really know the impact it would not only have on our lives, but the lives of other people as well.
Did you ever think all these years later in 2025 that Parkdale Dragon basketball would still be a topic of discussion, not just in the state of Arkansas, but in basketball circles in general?
I didn't, because I never really thought about it in that way. So, give me my older brother, Mickey, and I have a younger brother also, Ken Jolly. He won a state championship in Parkdale as well before his school consolidated. So we came from a culture of successful players. I never really talked about it. My older brother, totally different story. My younger brother, totally different story. I mean, they, still talk about it, with their friends and reminisce much, much more than I do. But no, I never thought about it in terms of people who were there and they were on that journey with me. Yeah, I knew we would have those experiences. We would have conversations about it. But folks outside, of that immediate circle, I actually didn't. So it's kind of now it's becoming, I guess, in the forefront of my mind to say, wow, we actually did something that meant something to other people. And, I wish more people, could see, hear, and experience, some of those situations in terms of how you can rise up, through all types of, adversities and challenges to become, on the top of the mountain, so to speak. To answer your question in short, I had no idea, that this story would have lived as long as it has.
Well, Mr. Claiborne, I really appreciate you taking time to visit with me and to reminisce about those legendary teams that you were a part of and the legacy of the Parkdale Dragons. And, once again, being the only Class B school in the boys division to win the overall state title and truly say that season you were the best of the absolute best in the state of Arkansas. Just to be able to kind of talk through that a little bit and get a player's perspective. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and like I said, I really appreciate you giving me a few minutes to kind of talk about this.
Absolutely, anytime, Marcus, and hopefully, one day if I get back into the state of Arkansas for a visit and I'm in your area, I'll definitely look you up.
Just an absolutely amazing story from Mr. Claiborne about he and his team and the amount of success that they had in those 2 seasons. Now, over the course of the 20 or so years that the overall happened after the state tournament and the different classification state champions were crowned, Parkdale stood and I guess will always be the only Class B boys team to win the overall, which is just absolutely amazing. Of all the classifications in the state of Arkansas for that 1979 season, Parkdale stood on top of the mountain. I really appreciate Mr. Claiborne taking the time to be on this episode, but I have to say this episode would not have been possible without Tyler Ringo and his endless work of tracking down Mr. Claiborne and actually even making the initial contact for me. Tyler was one of the first people that I spoke to when I first had the idea for this podcast. He said he loved the idea and his excitement was pretty evident because he immediately started giving me names of teams and coaches and players that could be possible episodes. From our first conversation, though, he was on a mission. He wanted to track down Mr. Claiborne, and the passion he showed for tracking him down reminded me a lot of Indiana Jones tracking down the Ark of the Covenant. Much like me, Tyler had heard about the legend of the Parkdale Dragons, as his dad was on the Biggers Reno team that faced Parkdale in the state tournament. But also, much like me, Tyler wanted to hear the story firsthand from the Parkdale side of things. So thank you very much, Tyler. Appreciate all your hard work in getting Mr. Claiborne on, and also for all the continued ideas that you keep throwing my way. Just so y'all know, several future episodes of this podcast are coming from the ideas that have been given to me by Tyler. Now, if any of you listening to this episode have ideas on teams, players, or coaches that you think we need to feature, drop us a message on Facebook or our Twitter page and let us know who they are. Now, don't forget to follow our pages and also subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a new episode. Also, the Final Jump Shot now has merchandise available for purchase through our online store with tpublic.com. Just go to www.teepublic.com and search for the Final Jump Shot. Now, with that said, our time has come to an end for this episode. I'm your host, Marcus Carlton, and you've been listening to the Final Jump Shot.
You've been listening to The Final Jump Shot, a Cam Productions podcast. Subscribe to The Final Jump Shot to ensure you never miss an episode.